The media prematurely predicting an end to the Trump administration. With all this talk in the New York Times, a vice president, Mike Pence, has been slamming the report that suggests he's somehow running a shadow campaign. The VP calling that article disgraceful and offensive. It alleged there are so many doubts over the current president that Republicans like Tom Cotton, Ben Sasse, John Cusack, and even, yes, Mike Pence are quietly planning a run in 2020. Now, if you're watching this show on Friday, Neil ran through a number of accomplishments that the White House has been pointing to in its first 6 months, whether it be job gains, stock market gains, all that kind of thing. So our question kind of to follow up on that, given that this article has been written, was or is the president being counted out way too early? To start us off, Charlie Gasparino, our guy, senior Fox Business correspondent here in the studio. From the independent Women's Voice, Heather Higgins, also here in our New York studios. And from The Hill, editor-in-chief Bob Cusack is here in D.C. We'll start with you, Heather. I mean, it's just there's been so many articles written, even during the campaign, that it's all over for Donald Trump. And although there have been moments where I think most of us would agree things have been messy during this first 6 months. You stay out of this, Gasparino.
Sorry, I just left.
We've written over. This president's been written off so many times. Maybe the premise of this article is doing it again. Everybody's got to run against him in 4 years.
Charlie's got a point. Mess is actually intentional. And I am in the weird position of somebody on Twitter actually toted this all up. I'm apparently one of only 27 people who actually predicted that Trump would win in advance of this, and on that list are people who are actually working for his campaign. So right. The number is actually even smaller than 27.
I was on the other side of that bet. Just
the people who are writing these articles and counting him out and saying all this is going on are the same people who've gotten it wrong every single time about whether or not what he says is going to sink his campaign or be a problem for him. This is a tempest in a teapot. They can't say that the economy is doing badly. They can't say that he's not fulfilling his campaign promises because he's actually done a lot of them, not legislatively, because that's
right. Well, they can say some things. They can say no big things of getting done in terms of health care, and all that is legitimate to some degree. And
but it's only 6 months, and he had to let Congress work through its dysfunctionality.
No, point taken. There's the idea of people running against him, including his sitting vice president.
No, he's going to be there for 8 years.
I took a lot of heat on social media, or some heat, not a lot.
You always do.
Yeah, I know. This was kind of, I guess, mild comparatively, for basically saying the markets are up because investors say net, no matter which way you put it. And I made this case to Neil, too.
I know.
But he disagreed with me. Net, Trumpism is better than Hillary Clintonism.
He creates a better business environment.
Either way, even if he does nothing, he's going to be better than the taxes, the regulations, and all the other bad stuff that would occur under Hillary Clinton. Now, that said, let's be real clear here. When you say these people, the people that the reporter in the New York Times who did that story, I don't remember him being a prognosticator. He's a reporter.
Right.
If you look at what he said in the story, he's pointing out but he's getting specific examples on why it looks like Pence is covering his rear end and thinking possibly of a run. And he laid it all out. It was a pretty compelling read.
I wonder if
he's starting a fundraising committee.
I'm going to ask Bob real quick about it, just to get in on the conversation, then we'll come back, Heather, to you, because I think that's kind of interesting in some ways, right? And Bob, you're the D.C. guy in the middle of all this, and you know how things work down there. Say that's true. I mean, I know the vice president's pushed back so hard on this, but is that so odd that someone behind the scenes, even a vice president, would be preparing for the possibility that the sitting president maybe chooses not to run for re-election? What if that happens and he's not ready? I mean, to get ready for something like that, is that so odd?
No, it's not. I mean, you want to be ready. Politicians always think years down the road. And remember, Pence would not be running against the president under this premise of the Times story. While others, I mean, I think there's very little doubt that Trump, first of all, I think he's going to run for re-election. Michael Bloomberg has said there's a 55% chance that Trump would win re-election. So, but I do think Trump will be primaried. It won't be certainly Pence. And the article made that clear.
Or somebody like that.
Well,
yeah, Kasich or Ben Sasse.
No, yeah, he's never denied it. Heather was going to make a point. I'm sorry, before I went to Bob. What was
it? To clarify, these people was indeed a generality about the editors at the New York Times who want to run stories that are showing that there's Republican discord, etc. And they're doing that in part because they don't have stories about markets doing poorly or something to run instead.
Right.
But the larger point is everybody down in that swamp is a political animal outside of Trump, right? And they are thinking about their long-term careers, and Pence as his obligation is thinking, what happens if something happens and Trump doesn't run?
Right, but
he needs to be prepared. The others are...
But that's the point of the story. And when you said messy, right, you said the Trump administration, yes, that's a euphemism for the general dysfunction that we have here. I mean, this is not good. And by the way, there's no arguing with that. General Kelly will tell you that. Okay?
Well, that's why he's there.
That's why he's there.
That's why he's in the job. Fair. That's fine.
There is a
level.
Disagree. Well, then I guess if there wasn't dysfunction, Reince Priebus would still be the chief of staff.
What's the point, though?
The point is this: if Mike Pence, in I guess Obama's first 6 months, you did not hear of Joe Biden setting up exploratory committees and taking the overt steps that Mike Pence is taking. You just didn't hear it.
Well, I mean, it was just a different environment, though. Is that your point?
Yeah.
So there was no need to do that.
This is a dysfunctional presidency. And before we attack this story, listen, I beat up on the New York Times all the time. I agree that they're not giving them credit for the markets and for the economy being better. But this story has.
So is that a function? Because this is what we got into. I want to play something Neil said on Friday in a second. But Bob, is that a function of as Charlie suggests? There's that Newsweek cover, by the way, where they called Trump the lazy boy.
Well, that was baloney. You know that. That's like absurd.
No, I know you guys talked a lot about that. I saw a lot of the show on Friday. Actually, let's listen to Neil first, then Bob, I'm going to come back to you on this. Here's a little bit of a taste of what Neil had to say about this cover of Newsweek magazine saying, hey, Trump's lazy, essentially. Neil was not happy with that take and gave his own take. Here it is.
It's in a news magazine, and impressionable people who don't know anything about mainstream media bias might be led to the conclusion that the president is a total waste. Just like they might have been led to that impression in the first 6 months to 1 year of Ronald Reagan's administration, when the media was similarly harsh and saying he was a guaranteed one-termer. Just like they were similarly dismissive in the first year of Abraham Lincoln's administration, saying he was losing the war and didn't have a clue. I believe Lincoln did okay. I believe Ronald Reagan did okay. It is way too soon to say whether Donald Trump will do okay and be okay. But for me, this kind of treatment, not okay.
So all of you had a lot to say about all of that. I'll just read a few of these tweets that came into us, and then we'll continue. KM tweeting, the real lazy boy is Newsweek. The magazine can't spend its time covering all that the President of the United States has accomplished, so it makes a trash cover to sell. Then Lori, a lot of us that weren't Trumpsters are thrilled with what he's getting done. Newsweek needs therapy. Disgusting for the USA. Now, we did hear some, like Lois on Facebook, who said, Neil, come off it already. I saw you 2 times Friday, and then again Saturday. It's all you could talk about. He's not lazy, but he's crazy. And then finally, Tammy, that is one of the most outrageous lies I've seen in the media. That's the one thing no one can say about Trump, that Trump is lazy. So, Bob, just use that as a way to come back to the exact point that Charlie was making before all of that, making the Biden kind of Obama comparison versus Pence and Trump now. How do you see that? Is that a function of the media treating the Obama presidency differently? In other words, the media being unfair to Trump as it wasn't to Obama, or just the circumstances being far different then than they are now?
I honestly think it's both. I think that the media has been, the media had a rough 2016. We got it wrong, basically. We had to try to answer the question, who's going to win? And Trump pulled off the shocker. But I also think too many in the media haven't done a lot of reflection of why they got it wrong. And number two, we're referees. Unless you're a columnist, as a reporter, as an editor, you can't be antagonistic.
So they're missing, follow up on that real quick, Bob. We haven't done enough of self-analysis in terms of what are we missing? We don't know what we were wrong about. Is that the point? People haven't kind of looked internally?
Yeah, one of the things, and personally, that when I got outside of the Beltway, when I went to Ohio 2 weeks before the election, I was like, Hillary Clinton has no shot to win Ohio. That we have to get out of the Beltway thinking. And there was a group think that he had no chance, and that was wrong.
Yeah, but let's also dial this in a different way. Newsweek has to sell magazines or get clicks, right? So what it did was one of the most outrageous things to get a click. It basically lied, because we all know he's not lazy, right?
A lot of things, but not lazy.
He's not lazy, is not it. So they lie, or they exaggerate, they use hyperbole to get clicks. Because let's be real clear here. Donald Trump lost the popular vote. There's a business reason why left-wing TV and left-wing media is doing this. And one of the reasons why they're doing this is because 50 of the population, or a little over 47% of the population voted against him. He only got, what, 43% of the vote? I can't remember the
Well, it's kind of a different discussion, right?
But remember, there's a business reason why that cover is out there, why MSNBC is doing better, because there are a lot of people who don't like President Trump.